Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 198 of the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. Having a great interview with our colleague, Alen Takhsh, today. We're going to go over his background and the great contribution he did for the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox magazine, issue 2, about family-based interviews and interviews in general. It's a lot of great information in there. As I mentioned, the magazine is out, issue 2. If you go to immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com/magazine, you can check it out. 70 or 80 pages, I think, chock full of information, just nonstop articles about every area of immigration law you can think of. That can really help your practice. If you're new or if you're seasoned, there's all sorts of topics. Great colleagues have contributed there. So I definitely recommend going to check that out at immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com/magazine. And I also want to thank the many sponsors we had, in particular, DocuWise. DocuWise is the all-in-one form software and management software. It keeps adding different things. I'm going to be interviewing one of the founders in a couple hours about some new things they've added in addition, because they're always adding new things. So we'll be talking about that soon. But if you like to get an extra 10% off their annual plan, go to DocuWise.com/immigration-lawyers-podcast and use the code Immigration Lawyers Podcast and check it out there. So with that, let's get it started. Alen, how are you doing today? Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely doing well. Thank you so much for having me, John. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you. So why don't you let us know about you? So where you grew up, how you became an immigration attorney, and where and what kind of practice you have.
Sure. Yeah, I was born in Iran. I was born in Tehran, Iran, and I spent the first 10 years of my life in Tehran. Thereafter, my family and I immigrated to Germany. I spent about 3 years in Germany. And basically it took a while for our paperwork to get ready. And so after 3 years, we came to the United States. So I had to start life all over again for the third time.
What years were those? What years were you in Germany, and when did you come to the U.S.?
Yeah, good question. So actually, interesting fact, I was born on the day of and the year of the revolution in Iran. So on February 11, 1979. I feel like anyway, that's a different story. But so 10 years there, and was in Iran during the Iran-Iraq war. So that was definitely traumatic. And in 1989, we emigrated to Germany. And so I was in Germany when the Berlin Wall fell.
Wow, you're getting all the historical milestones.
That's right. I was also in Germany when Germany won the World Cup. So that was amazing. We came to the United States just in time for me to watch Michael Jordan win his third championship with the Bulls. And so been here since the end of 1992.
And what city did you get settled in?
In the U.S., we settled in Evanston, Illinois, actually, where my office is right now.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so that's why the Michael Jordan reference. You're an Illinois guy, Chicago guy. Okay.
That's right. Yeah. For your listeners who are not from Illinois or Chicago, we don't even say Jordan. We just say Michael. It's presumed that you'll know who we're talking about.
There's this YouTuber. He's a successful businessman. He made a YouTube page. His name is Patrick Bet-David. His channel is called Valuetainment. He kind of had the same situation. He left Iran, his family. He's half Armenian, half Assyrian. And they went to Germany, and he was in a refugee camp for a couple of years before they came to the United States. And when you were settled in Germany, was it temporary settlement for the refugee process for the U.S., or were you just living there? What kind of thing was going on?
Yeah, great question, John. So Patrick and I have a lot in common because I'm also Assyrian and Armenian. And so when we fled/left Iran in 1989, we sought refuge in Germany. And so we had to go through the refugee/asylee process to finally make our way to the United States. And so we'll get into this a little bit later, but when I sit down and speak with my clients and I say to them, I know how you feel, or sometimes you don't even have to say that. You kind of have that understanding that, wow, this guy really understands where I'm coming from. It's because I've literally walked their path.
Yeah.
It's not made up, and it's not something that you can really fake either. You either have or you haven't.
Yeah, very interesting to hear. It's kind of traumatic to talk about that, but the stories he tells of camps and like just how chaotic it could be, it really shines a light on the experience people go through just to live in some sort of peace in the United States. But so you came here, you settled in. Did you have any siblings, or is it just yourself and your parents?
Yeah, I have a brother and a sister. They are both more accomplished and smarter than I will ever be. My sister is an MBA from Kellogg School of Business here in Northwestern, and she has held many different executive positions. And my brother is the head of a hospital here in Chicago. He has his own practice, quite a renowned practice at that. And so they have shown me the path. And so my life endeavor has been to kind of live up to the standards that they've set for me. And your, I think you'd kind of understand where I'm coming from, where in our household, you either are an engineer or a lawyer or a doctor. So
Yeah.
my brother, he ended up getting the doctor position. My sister, engineering slash computer business, and so here I am. I was left with law. So there you go.
Perfect. Then how did you make your way to immigration law?
You know, uh, I've listened to your previous podcasts, and it's so interesting because some of your guests say things like, I went to law school, I knew what I wanted to do, and I just pursued it. And for me, I never wanted to have anything to do with immigration law, anything,
Hmm.
because I didn't want to be reminded of the journey, the tumultuous journey that we were on to make our way to the United States. And so, but as they say, you often meet your destiny on the road you take to avoid it. Uh,
Yeah.
Sometimes the universe has certain plans for you, and so anyway, I went to the University of Chicago. I majored in economics. We have very good program there, and the intent was to become an investment banker. So I thought, but I ended up working just part-time job, and then became full-time job working at a fairly prestigious law firm here. Uh, I kind of saw in myself certain skills that would come in handy as an attorney. Took the LSAT, and decided to go to law school. Even in law school, I didn't want to have anything to do with immigration law, but over time, the further I traversed on my path, my professional path, the closer I got to the immigration world. I ended up working at a small immigration law firm, then putting up my own shingle in 2011. So started out very, very small, and we are serving the greater Chicago community at this time.
Wonderful. And what kind of office do you have set up? How many associates and staff and stuff?
Yeah. So, for all intents and purposes, we are still a small law firm. I'm the principal attorney. I have of counsel relationships with attorneys, and I have um, three paralegals, different relationships, independent contractor, W-2, etc.
Yeah.
Uh, and so one of the things that we as practitioners do is to try to find the most efficient way to handle cases. And sometimes it doesn't need to be a situation where everybody's at the office at the same time, especially with the pandemic. You find different ways to really move cases along, and so we've done a really good job of that.
Interesting. And what kind of cases does your firm handle?
I would say our bread and butter is family-based immigration cases.
Hmm.
I handle quite a few asylum cases from various parts of the world, and some VAWA cases. We handle some employment law, but I tend to refer those out to colleagues who are well versed in that area. And I would say about 20 to 35% of our practice is EOIR, removal defense. So we try to handle all sorts of different cases.
Yeah. I mean, when you have EOIR cases, you need the paralegals and the staff because there's just so much going on, and it just so you get so involved, and it just the volume is a lot. What was I going to ask? Uh, Sorry, I had a question on top of my head. I forgot it. Oh yeah. So it's good to know that you're in Chicago and you do asylum cases, because every once in a while it pops up or someone says, someone locally. And I always want someone to go with the interview with them, someone who's there, who deals with them. So it's good to know you're in Chicago doing those kind of cases. So what has been like the headaches you've had? I mean, Trump's gone now. They're cleaning up after the mess slowly but surely. But what are some like the case hiccups you've had recently? Like one thing I'm having is birth certificate issues. They complain about birth certificates with USCIS when there's no problem. So I'm always like, why are they RFing this when this is like exactly what they need? What kind of issues have you been seeing pop up?
At the you're talking about USCIS or consular processing or anywhere?
I mean, I only deal with USCIS consular processing, but you are as well for those listeners. But what kind of stuff do you see that's been driving you crazy?
Just delays
Yeah.
in processing, consular processing cases rather. Those have been taking forever for obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
However, at the local Chicago office, as far as USCIS is concerned, we have been very lucky, actually, to be honest with you, because I would say about 80 to 90% of all of our cases move forward very robustly. Clients, especially with the family-based ones, the spousal petitions, the beneficiary ends up getting the green card anywhere between, I would say, 8 to 10 months,
Mm-hmm.
which, relatively speaking, is
Yeah.
fantastic. And we have seen some responses from USCIS where they say you are lacking a certain document in the packet that was submitted, even though an exhibit clearly shows that one was submitted. So there's some quirky things happening behind closed doors. Maybe documents get lost and stuff, but it comes with the territory. So other than that, we've been very, very blessed actually in terms of how quickly cases have been moving forward.
Now, one interesting thing was then the public charge rule came, and of course, kept going back and forth on it. That the updated public charge rule. Illinois was one of those places that had its own decision. So, how confusing was it for you guys in Illinois when you're getting like local marriage cases filed there? Whether it's filed that old 994, whatever it was called, or was that a headache when they undid it? Do it? That must have been madness when if you're in Illinois.
Honestly, that's such a fantastic question. I'm paranoid. Paranoid, and I tend to go above and beyond. And sometimes I drive my clients crazy because I push them so hard to give
Yeah.
me everything that I need. But at the end, they appreciate it because they realize why I was doing it. But to your point, I never stopped
Mm.
submitting the I-944.
Yeah.
Even when we were told that, okay, this week you don't have to submit it, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to submit it. Worst case scenario, they're just not going to look at it.
Exactly.
And so it's always better to be over prepared as opposed to saying, okay, well, I don't need to do this week, but I might have to do it next week, because you never know. Even when you comply, even when you do things exactly as instructed by USCIS, you just don't know who is going to be reviewing your file, whether they've been trained properly.
Yeah.
You never want that packet to be sent back to you. So might as well just do more work, and you'll be better off for it.
It was such a peculiar situation because like one state out of the union didn't have to do it. And in the mailroom, they're not necessarily going to pay attention to see where their jurisdiction is, and that could easily be. I mean, I see people getting rejection notices for like I had one rejection notice for I-751 where they said the person didn't sign it, and they sent it back with those stamps at the bottom with the signatures right there. I'm like, well, what's going on here? So you got to always prepare for the worst. It's unbelievable the things that you get back sometimes.
Exactly. And the article that I ended up submitting to your magazine talked about how to prepare for interviews, and the same thing. One of the main questions I get is, well, wait a second, we gave them a ton of evidence, why should I give them more? And so the idea is that you have to throw the kitchen sink at them to the point where I actually had an officer tell me, you know what, counsel, no more, please, no more, I'm good.
Yeah.
And so I loved hearing that. I loved hearing that because that's exactly the type of preparedness that I think clients should go into these interviews with. And any of the young lawyers listening, don't ever take the path of least resistance. Always take the harder road. Always do more. not only will you get good reviews from your clients, but USCIS officers are going to really, really appreciate how meticulous you were, how much attention you paid to the nitty gritty parts of the case. And if you do that, I think you'll be better off.
Another aspect that comes to play, the importance of, to me, overpacking the evidence is more and more I see USCIS at not only the I-751 stage, but at naturalization, looking back to marriages, especially if they've gotten divorced, to try to question things and say it was fraud. So the more you have in the past, the better it is for client in the future, because they're not going to hold on to these documents. The other spouse might have it. So you're just doing them a service of, having, a good foundation. So there's no coming back later and saying it's a problem. Like I have cases, people come to your consultations where they filed an adjustment case like in 2005. And then while the case was going, they got divorced and they just stopped it. They don't get an NTA or anything. 10 years later, they marry a U.S. citizen. And at that interview, they say you did fraud previously. And at that point, 2005, it's like 10, 15 years ago, they don't have the documentation to protect themselves. And there's not as much email history and all that kind of stuff. So if we do a FOIA and we see like a packed I-130 with a lot of evidence, that can help overcome these bogus fraud claims that they're really pushing. And not always bogus, but I think it's too much the way they're doing it. So it helps the client, even if they don't understand it, but you're kind of like plan B, C, D, E, F, and all down the line. That's what we're getting paid for, to be extra cautious about everything.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we've noticed, especially as it relates to certain countries, is that certain countries are under a greater microscope. They're being scrutinized far more than other countries. And so when you are meeting with a client and doing the intake, make sure that you ask probative questions, tough questions, because you don't want to be in a situation where you're going to be surprised at the interview, for the adjustment interview. We had a situation where thankfully, we didn't handle this case from the onset, but anyway, it was a different law firm. The person goes to the adjustment interview and the officer says, sir, how many times have you been married? And kind of confused, this beneficiary says, well, once, and she's sitting right next to me. And he goes, sir, are you sure? It was, yes, I'm pretty sure. I think I'd remember how many times I've been married. And so the officer turns around, pulls out this huge folder stemming from the consular processing, where the person had applied for a visitor visa. And in that visa, it was noted that not only were they married, but they also had a child. And so they came to us for help. And, sometimes you can't avoid those situations because the person was less than truthful with the government. And so now you're looking in a situation where you have to show extreme hardship to a spouse, the current spouse, in order to overcome certain transgressions that the individual had made previously. So those situations, they're going to come up. You can't help it. It is what it is. But other than that, you really have to do your due diligence in order to understand your client's case inside and out, to make sure that there are no surprises down the road.
That issue pops up more and more with the DS-160s because their accumulation of data and ease of transferring to USCIS has gotten better, so you can review that kind of stuff. And one issue is some lawyers do a FOIA for every case, both USCIS and DOS, and the delays in FOIA and whether the Department of State is going to actually release the FOIA and how long that's going to take. It's always like a fine line. I got to really read the client. I'm like, is this going to be a DS-160 issue? Like I have this where they don't tell the government they had military conscription, for example. And I'm like, well, did you tell them? Like, I don't know. But I'm like, how do you know? There's a question that says, have you been in the military? Do you have any military training? You got to tell them they asked that. And they don't know. Then we have to do a FOIA. But it's something to be very careful of. Now, you mentioned consular processing. Are there any particular countries you do more of, and what have you been seeing? And have you been getting any interviews scheduled at any embassies?
One of the things that I love about my practice is that I get to meet people from all over the world. And so we've had cases from Jordan, Iraq, Iran, European countries, Latin American countries. And so what I'm noticing more and more as it relates to some of the Middle Eastern consular processing cases, especially some stemming from Iraq, they are really pressing hard on birth certificates. I'm not sure if they've identified some some kind of fraud situation. I don't know. For some reason, they're just under a huge microscope. And some of my Christian Iraqi clients who, for example, have a document, a baptismal certificate stating the name of the parents and their name, of course, and the date of birth is not sufficient. So then, well, you have a case where the person fled Iraq. They have no one in Iraq.
Yeah.
And so what is the expectation on the part of DOS for the client to then travel back to Iraq in order to get that certificate? And so then you look at secondary evidence and try to fill in the gap. But some of the requirements, honestly, are a little bit too unreasonable, because it seems like there's a blanket rule that they try to apply to every single country. And that's just not a very smart way to do it.
Yeah. No, with Iraq in particular, I've had issues where we sent the right birth certificate, right police certificate. They're like, it's not correct. And I'm like, what do you mean? It's exactly what the visa reciprocity chart says. And then there's the issue of just not getting interviews scheduled. With Iranian cases, it's just not really happening. And all over the world, there's some places it's really inconsistent how it works out. That's been like the biggest frustration I have with consultations is they're like, well, the first question is how long it takes and how much. And when I say how long, I'm like, there's no answer to that, because embassies aren't just doing interviews most of the time. So I don't know when they're going to open. So I can't tell you when things are going to back up. And there are like 10 or 15 times more backlogged cases at the National Visa Center than there were last year. So telling couples you're not going to be with your spouse for probably at least 2 years is kind of like giving them like being a doctor saying you're sick and you have this condition and all this kind of stuff. I just see them want to start crying sometimes. And they're like, no, I just read online this and that. I'm like, yeah, that was online before. I mean, who knows especially with Middle Eastern cases and administrative processing, who knows what the hell's going on there. But there's pre-COVID and there's after COVID. The world's been in shutdown for 2 years. This is just the nastiness of it. What I hope is Biden create some sort of special visa. Just say, if you're married to a U.S. citizen or maybe a green card holder or immediate relative, just come here and do processing here and bypass consular processing. Just get a quick B2 or something like that. But they're not even doing B2 interviews, but we'll see.
No, you're absolutely right, John. You're 100% right. And one thing that I always tell clients is that the easiest thing that I can sell you if you're thirsty is water.
Yeah.
So if you're desperate and if you just want to hear good news, that's really, really easy for me to sell you. However, what clients more often than not appreciate is the fact that you're being honest with them. So you tell them, listen, I don't know when your case is going to come to fruition, but I promise you that if there's something to be done, I will do it. I will be next to you, standing next to you. I'll be your comrade in arms, and we will get through this together. And so that has helped us tremendously. And not to, I don't want to boast or do anything of that, but one of the reasons why we enjoy a 5.0 stars on online, on Avo and everything else, is because we're literally just doing the bare minimum in my mind, which is that we're being honest.
Yeah.
And so honesty goes a long way. Most of the immigration lawyers that I know are competent. They're decent people. And so the way that you set yourself apart is by literally being available more so in difficult times rather than in good, answering phone calls, answering text messages, answering emails, and being there for them, because there's nothing more traumatic for these people than going through this process, this journey alone. Mm-hmm. And so if you can be there for them, if you can reassure them that everything's going to be okay, or if things are not going to be okay, that you'll do everything in your power to make it okay, then I think you're going to stand out and be a better lawyer for it.
That's perfectly worded. I 100% agree. Well, setting the tone of the experience, both like expectations of the process and yourself, and just being there. It seems like half our work is just being a psychologist of sorts, a comrade, as you put it, to help them. That's what people really want. And I think one of the main reasons people get frustrated is their lawyers may have too many cases and they don't have enough time to take that call or respond within a day or two. Sometimes they take them a week. And when someone's stressing out, and I see clients losing sleep over stuff that has nothing, they read something online that has nothing to do with them, and they don't sleep for 3-4 days, and then they call me. I'm like, why don't you just tell me it's nothing to do with your case? This is like completely something different, or the blog that you read is just wrong. That's not what the rules are, which is frequently now I see that happening. So just being there, following up. There's some lawyers now who have bigger teams, especially. They have designated person they hire just to call every client once a month, just say, how are you doing? That's it. To try to catch something as a problem, and just remember we're there for you. Just let us know if there's we communicate. That communication level is the number one thing for, especially when you're doing USCIS, consular process, DOS kind of practice, maybe new IR, just constantly just touching base with them. And many times the client's like, you don't need to call me, I'm busy, but on your end, doing that extra is what creates that business and keeps it going.
Exactly. And one of the things that we do is that every single client has my personal cell phone number, and I've been very, very lucky because I can't think of any one of them who has abused it to the point where I was like, okay, I regret doing that. Just knowing that they have a lawyer's personal cell phone in their phone stored in case something happens or in case of an emergency goes a long way. We have not hired someone to make these calls, although that's a fantastic idea. I will tell you that no email, no text, no phone call goes unanswered more than 24 hours in my office. Even to the point where, for example, I just got to tell them I'm busy, I'll get back to you in 48 to 72 hours. At least they know that their concern has acknowledgement. And maybe it has something to do with the fact that I've been through that process, but really on a human level, you either care or you don't. And so if you don't care, then you're probably in the wrong business. If you're in the business, if you got into immigration law because you want to make money, trust me, there's easier way to make money than immigration law. So you got to rethink that as well. But if you do this for the right reasons, then you're going to go far, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, great. I have my cell phone out. My cell phone's on my website even, and in a lot of the Facebook groups and listener groups, everyone says the last thing you want to do is give your cell phone out. That's crazy, this and that. But I've never had problems with doing this for 11 plus years. No one's ever abused it, and clients after we file, like they disappear until the case is done. I really haven't followed up too much. So I don't do removal defense, which has different levels of stress on it. But nowadays, especially with the emails, people, if they have worries and stuff, just send me a quick email, and it's easy enough to do a quick response on a lot of this stuff. It's not something that's to be on hold. You got to be careful of who you accept as a client. If you see they're wild at the beginning, just that comes with experience to be able to judge something like that. But it's just the way. I got this from when I would go to doctors. And some doctors would come and just say hi, and then a nurse would come and see me, and they would say, bye, here's the bill. And then, I'll go, and then it'll take like 3 weeks to get lab results for something that's pretty simple. And it's like, this is a human being. They're worried about their health. They want to talk to the doctor, not the nurse, nothing wrong with nurses, but they want to talk to the doctor. And, they want to get the results fast. And sometimes you get the results, and they take 4 or 5 days just call you and tell what the results are, even if it's something okay. So I took that bad example of how medicine has turned out, especially because the insurance system has a mess. And I was like, I don't want to have my legal practice that way. So I learned from the mistakes of our brothers and sisters in the medicine field.
Absolutely. And one really important point as a corollary to what you just said, listeners have to be mindful of this very important piece of information that I'm going to share. Do not be afraid to turn down business.
Yeah.
It's okay to say no. So what you do is you use your emotional intelligence to assess the energy of whoever is sitting in front of you, because sometimes it's not a good match. It doesn't mean that the person sitting across the table is not a good guy or a good woman. It just means that there's something off, that you see maybe you're going to fall short of the expectations, or there's just something not there. And I would say about 5 to 10% of the time, I have to have that conversation with prospective clients, and that's okay. Yeah. That's okay, because there's going to be another lawyer out there somewhere who is going to be a better fit for them. And of course, this goes without saying, but if you get the sense that the person sitting across the table from you wants you to do something that is less than truthful, meaning something's not right with their case, obviously you're going to say no. But even beyond that, I think you have to be in tune with your emotional intelligence in order to make sure that you accept the right types of cases.
I see lawyers who are super stressed out, and this could be new people or even people doing it for like 20, 30 years. And there's a policy that a lot of people do is say anyone who comes in the door is a yes. Just, not if it's a good case, not if it's problems, but they don't gauge whether this person is going to be a drain on resources, on just life and dealing with them, and the cost that comes with that. Because one client who just is inappropriate in some way or fashion creates havoc could down the line, cost you 3 or 4 clients, and because of the time, or it might put you in a bad mental zone so that you don't, have a good consultation and you lose a good client. I had one case a couple years back that was referred to me, and I like people finding me online and they're all not being referred, but it was a referral. I took it, and I had a consultation with them by video, and one of the parties was kind of like just jumping around all over the place, maybe intoxicated, I don't know. Eventually, like, my gut was like, okay, these people are wild. It doesn't make sense right now. So I should back up, but it was a referral too, so I didn't want to make the other client feel bad. So I said, okay. We start the process. Midway, they get divorced, ugly divorce. And then I get dragged into it for no reason because of mistakes by the lawyers. And so all of a sudden, it was like, it just creates so much work and hours where I was getting not paid for. I was sucking my time going to court to sit there at a hearing. Eventually 3 or 4 times the judge dismissed me. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, I should just got on my gut and said, no to this client, right? Regardless of the fact that was referred to me and it might hurt the feelings of the person referred to me. I don't care. Return the consultation fee if you have to. It's going to lead to avoid leaving a bad review potentially even. So they say, listen, I didn't take your money. I just don't think it's a good fit. I'm not doing a fake consultation just to collect fees. That's what some people think, like a consultation fee is going to make or break, but just have it. But that's a lesson learned. Like, it just go with your gut from the beginning.
Absolutely. Just yesterday, John, I'm not making this up. Just yesterday, I had a prospective client come to me for a simple response. Well, I shouldn't say simple. Kind of, it was a response. It was an I-751 response to an RFE.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, no problem. And she told me the history, and she had gone to this other lawyer who shall remain nameless. And I said, just out of curiosity, what was the fee quoted to you? And she said $30,000. I said, I'm sorry, what? She said $30,000. At first, I thought she said $3,000, but I just want, she said no, $30,000. And obviously, this is not rocket science, an exorbitant amount of money for something that should probably not cost anywhere close to that. So lesson from that whole experience is this: it's okay to say no, but also know how to say no. Don't quote an exorbitant fee and make yourself look blank. Just be honest and say, I don't want your case for the following reasons, or this is not a good fit. Don't come up with these like really ridiculous fees. And by the way, this particular lawyer, this is not the first time that this person has done that. So be honest, be honorable, truthful, and treat your clients. And I can't believe I have to say this, but treat your clients the way that you'd like to be treated. It's very simple, not rocket science.
That's amazing. I get these. I have situations where people come follow-ups from other attorneys, and I do see their contracts. And sometimes these fees are like crazy, like 10 cases in one fee for one. And I'm like, no, I guess that's how you get rich being an immigration lawyer. It's amazing that people are willing to pay these kind of fees. That it's just. And it's kind of like this person didn't ask a second person. Like a lot of times people just go to the first person and say yes, whatever it is. Or maybe the exorbitant fee makes them feel like this person probably knows more than other people. And who knows, maybe because they have these kind of fees, they have like a Ferrari parked in front and it entices them thinking they're like a great attorney or something like that. But people pull out these fees even when they don't have it. It's kind of wild, like that they get paid on it too.
And John, this goes back to what we were talking about just a few minutes ago, which is that when you have someone who is desperate, it's so easy to sell them water, but thirsty. Like you just don't do that, because you have a responsibility to remain honorable to your clients at every stage of the case, from the very beginning all the way to the end. Yeah. If you're the right fit, fight for them like there's no tomorrow. But if you're not the right fit, treat them like you'd want to be treated if you were in their shoes. Come on now. we can do this. Like, you be honorable. And I think there are just a handful of attorneys out there who are giving the rest of us a really bad name. And I cannot tell you how many times people come to me, sit down, and the first thing out of their mouth is, I'm here because of your online reviews. I
Mm-hmm.
don't even have to say anything,
Yeah.
because they've been ill treated so badly
Mm-hmm.
that they just want someone to be honest with them, truthful, and fight for them. Like, basically, they mean it.
Yeah. You know, one thing is, there's this show online, not online, I watch it online, but these realtors throughout the country. It's a Bravo show where they show like these high-end realtors that sell expensive houses and stuff. And there's one guy in Los Angeles who is one of the biggest in the country, allegedly makes a lot of money. But I see with him consistently is to get the business away from other agents when they're interviewing different agents to sell the house. He always over bids the house. It's like, oh, the other agent said it's like 5 million. I think it's a $7 million house, and that entices these people because it goes to the agreed and those kind of cases, and it causes them to get him. And at the end of the day, he sells a house for whatever anyone else sold, but he would get the case because he would tell them that. But people would just give in and say okay at the end of it. But it's similar, like if someone promises someone, yeah, we'll get your marriage case done in 3 months, naturalization 3 months. It does happen once in a while. It's not unknown, but especially now with coronavirus, to do a consular processing case like in certain countries, I-130s are like LPR I-130s. I'm seeing him take a year and a half. Now I had a guy call me. He got an LPR I-130 approved for marriage case in 3 months. I'm not sure how that happened, but you can promise them, you get the business, but then you have a really dissatisfied person. But I mean, there's always the line they say, oh, USCI has changed and stuff. I think they just to do that, but it's really misleading. It probably does lead to business because you could fool people into it, but it's just inevitably, enough people are getting frustrated. Your reputation could get ruined. It's just not the right thing to do when it comes down to it, because people plan their lives on this. Like, okay, my wife's going to come here. We're going to buy a house. We're going to have kids now. And so I have couples who are in that time where they want to have kids. And I'm like, well, you got to plan this out because you might get stuck in administrative processing. 3 years of life might be in this limbo. So where's your kid going to be born? Are they going to be a citizen when they're born? We got to start planning this stuff out because it's a huge unknown right now. What's going on in the system?
Absolutely. And John, I don't want to tax your time too much, but I'm not sure how much longer we have. But I just want to say something that's so important, and it touches on what you just brought up. At the end of the day, it all comes down to how you want to be remembered. We all have a very finite number of days on earth. As a matter of fact, I'm 42. I've been practicing for about 14, 15 years. I have about maybe 40, 45, hopefully, years left. But really, we have about 40, or I have about 40, 45 summers left. 40, 45 winters. That's not a very long that's not a very long time. So in this very short amount of time, I have to leave behind a legacy, or try to do something that will hopefully make, or rather allow, people to remember me fondly. If you're the type of lawyer who is going to go to sleep at night after knowingly deceiving people, over promising, under delivering, overcharging, if you're okay to go to sleep that night with a clear conscience, then God bless you, that's who you are. But I can't do that, and most people can't do that. You can't do that, John, because you are not going to be able to go to sleep with a clear conscience at night, known as the sleep test, knowing that you did not live to the standards that your mom and dad set for you, or and so it comes down to how John wants to be remembered, how Alen wants to be remembered. And I personally want to be remembered fondly. My father, who passed away in 2006, he was a civil engineer in Iran. He had about 300 people working for him. My uncle met someone at church, and the person came up to him and said, sir, I couldn't, he didn't say sir, he said, Edmund, his name is Edmund. He said, I couldn't help but notice that your last name is Takhsh. Any relation to Edward Takhsh?
Mm-hmm.
And my uncle said, yes, that's my brother. This person, his eyes welled up with tears, initially happily. He said that your brother employed me in Iran 45 years ago, and he treated me better than my own father had. And I just want to get his telephone number so that I can say thank you. My uncle said that unfortunately, Edward passed away in 2006, and that's exactly how lawyers should conduct themselves, so that clients, employees down the line, long, long, long after we are gone, they're going to look back and they're going to say, God bless John, God bless Alan, because of them my life is better. But if you're not that type of person, guess what, forgive my language, you were probably an asshole in law school and you're always going to be an asshole.
I think that should be the standard of how an immigration attorney should be. Like 20 years from now, will people still, clients still be like, oh yeah, this person was part of my life and helped me through this process? Because I see that a lot. I learned how to be an immigration attorney from a guy who started in the 70s. And in like late 2000s, I think was when I started working with them, in early 2010s, I was working for his firm. Like he would call from like 20 years ago and just say hi or send cookies or invite us to their granddaughter's quinceañera, this and that. And I was like, oh wow, this is like a really special, intimate relationship we have with people. That's different. That's what I'm like, it's just a special relationship you have that's unique and you can't find anywhere else. We have to know everything about them. We have to get their taxes, sometimes going through their heavily private lives, especially if you're doing asylum. You got to know every single aspect of their lives. So it's so personal that you just have to have that relationship and make sure it matches. We could talk about this forever, but Alan, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it. Stick around, but before we leave, after we stick around, we'll talk a little bit. But if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way to reach out? And are there any social media places they can find you?
Sure, absolutely. Listeners or viewers rather can find us on Facebook, Takhsh Law PC. They can email me at alan@takhshlaw.com. I don't even know my own email address apparently. And if they have urgent questions or even with other lawyers wanting to connect, text is always awesome. So 847-409-2864. I love getting texts, even if it's 3 a.m. And so feel free to connect. I love that.
Perfect. And Takhsh is spelled Takhsh for those listening on the audio podcast. Alan, thank you so much for coming, and I appreciate the article contribution to the Toolbox magazine.
Thank you so much, John. You're the best. Thank you so much.